Okay, Coffee County Mayor Dennis Hunt, we're calling the very first meeting of Coffee County's Opioid Abatement Fund Disbursement Committee to order. This is our organizational meeting. Today is December the 18th, 2024, and we have our full committee present, all 5 members. We will be going around the table and introducing each other shortly. We do have individuals from CTAS here to conduct an orientation for this committee, so they do hit the ground running in the right direction. So having said that, I would like to start introductions with
Leslie Brassfield.
and your position in Coffee County.
Manchester City Schools, I'm Coordinated School Health.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Heather Duncan. I'm with CTAS, County Technical Assistance Service.
I'm Robert Carter. I'm Circuit Judge Division 2.
Lee Nettles, an investigator with the Public Defender's Office here in Coffee County.
Roseanne Smith, I am a Commissioner for District 3 here in Coffee County.
Trevor Henderson, I am with the UT SMART Initiative, which is a sister agency to CTAS.
Martha Henley, I'm the CEO of Unity Medical Center.
Thank you for that. I would like to open the floor for nominations for chairman. As I pointed out earlier, this is an organizational meeting. We do need, you 5 members need to nominate and elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. So at this time, the floor is open for nominations for chairman. And my name is not to be included, okay? Anybody?
Judge Carter, would you consider the nomination?
Sure.
I'd like
Okay,
to nominate Judge Carter for that,
okay.
as chair.
So Leslie Blassfield has nominated Judge Carter. Everybody was trying to go at once, looked like, and it was sort of clogging the pipe. But okay, I will take the vote at this time. All those in favor of Judge Carter being chairman of this committee signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Judge Carter, if you would, you can take over the meeting. I think I've laid out the purpose of this meeting is organizational. So next, if you would, please take nominations for vice chair and then for secretary.
Very well. So, our nominations open for Vice Chair.
I'll nominate Lee Nettles.
Second. Let's take a vote. Any other nominations? All right, all votes for Mr. Nettles, Vice Chair, say aye.
Aye.
I second it. I nominate Lee Nettles as second chair of the Opioid Dispensation Commission. Very good. And what's the other one?
Secretary.
All right.
This will be the individual that's in charge of taking the minutes.
I nominate Roseanne Carton. Are there a second?
I'll second.
Let's take a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Carton is nominated is appointed as secretary. Very good. We've been brought here today to discuss the dispensation of opiate funds that have been accorded to our county. Is that right? A state grant. And I'm going to let Ms. Duncan take over and explain exactly what we've got and what we are, by new mandate, supposed to do with it. And we'll go from there.
Okay.
I would say you guys can open up.
Okay, so I'll start. So I work for CTAS, County Technical Assistance Service, and we assist counties in any capacity, county officials in any capacity across the state. My district is If you stack Coffee and Franklin County on top of each other, just like they are the map, and go east to the state line, those are my 12 counties. I have 15 right now due to an opening that we have. But anyway, so we help counties in any way that they need it. Well, a couple of years ago, when counties started receiving, or knew they were going to receive, the opioid funds, both through the state and through, judgments, they were awarded judgments. Counties were receiving large sums of money. And most of the time, counties are not prepared. Counties have not been prepared to spend the money with the expertise that they need and with the requirements that the money comes with. I don't know if you all have seen it yet, and Trevor will go into this, but the money has a lot of restrictions, and the intent of the money is to try to rid counties of this, terrible opioid addiction, and prepare them, to do whatever they can, either through education or, prevention, whatever they deem necessary. So I work as a branch of the University of Tennessee, and our leader at Institute for Public Service created, or was involved in creating, a branch of IPS, Institute for Public Service, called the SMART Initiative, Substance Misuse and
Resources for Tennessee.
Right. And in doing so, the SMART Initiative, I said it's kind of hard when you're traveling around and you introduce your coworker here as the SMART team, because it makes you kind of, everybody look what kind of
Setting
team,
me up
what
for
team
fall.
are you on if he's on the SMART team?
It's like your stick.
Yeah, but anyway, so they are traveling around to counties to try to help make sure that they meet the criteria for the money and they don't have to pay it back. But in doing so, we've encouraged, truth of the matter, the money is handed to the mayor. But most mayors in counties know very little about opioid use and abuse. And so the recommendation has been put together a committee in each county, a committee of people from different perspectives, like you all. I'm very impressed with this committee, to be honest. People who have had experience, people who are in the profession. But this committee decides, what kind of procedures you all want to use, and basically, how do you want the money to be spent? Now, Trevor will go into lots of details about the fact that, this is, some of you may have heard, I'm sure Roseanne knows, a couple of years ago, counties got the ARP money, the rescue plan money. Well, that was one time and done. You are handed a big pot of money. It had guidelines. You had to spend it. If you didn't spend it right, they took it back. Well, this is not one pot of money. This is a big pot of money now, but it goes on, for a long period of time, 18 years, I think. So, this is not something that you'll decide one time, how do you want to spend this money? It is maybe an 18-year commitment. So, and that's not saying the committee has to stay the same for 18 years, but I'm just saying,
But it's a long-term recurring.
it's a long-term, yeah. So, I'm not an expert. Trevor is the expert on the uses of the money, and the SMART team has put together lots of good resources, like an application, like the mayor alluded to a few minutes ago, an application that you all can use, some legal agreements that you all can use. My part of this is just to kind of the business side of it, making sure that that if you purchase things, you have to go by the county purchasing laws, which are much different than in the private world, and that you kind of jump through the proper hoops from the technical side. But as far as the opioid and all that, the uses of the money and how to proceed, Trevor is an expert. So I'm not going to say anything else, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
A statement first. I've been told by our IT expert this TV does not work. They just discovered it this week, so my apologies for that. Does this committee make recommendations to the mayor?
This
Is
com-
that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And then you all present that then to the full commission, because, you know, just like, the full commission has to approve, as you all know, every penny that comes into the budget and every penny that goes out of the budget. So even though we know the county's gonna get this money, the commission still has to approve it coming in and has to approve it going out.
Okay.
Of course, this being a table full of experts, you would hope they would honor the expertise. That's kind of the intent. So, without this being able to go onto a screen, we're going to try to see if we can do this on a very small screen.
And I don't have to be in the middle here. Somebody,
Okay.
Martha, you come up here, let's change seats, because I've seen all this multiple times.
And I'm gonna have to look over to see what page I'm even on, so this is less than ideal. I will try and move it around as well, if that helps, because I know the light's gonna mess with you. First couple of slides are not that important, they're mainly introductory. Again, I am Trevor Henderson, you know who I'm attached to. But just very quickly, I've been working on the overdose crisis, was the opioid crisis. We're now in a place where it's not just opioids, and you, like every other county, it's cocaine with fentanyl in it, it's meth with fentanyl in it, it's everything's all mixed up. So it is really a polysubstance overdose crisis at this point, rather than an opioid crisis. But since 2017, I've been working on this issue in one way or another, and I've been with the SMART team for a year now. So I've been in the position that's nearly a bit more like what you're about to do, which is starting with pretty much nothing, finding funding, and then trying to figure out what to do with it. So being where you are in that sense, and then trying to develop programs and ideas. I will say this up front, that you should have no problem spending this money, because this money doesn't even scratch the surface of the extent of the issue. The hardest thing you will have to do is probably turn people down and turn ideas down. And we can get more into that. But I am the Middle Tennessee consultant. We have a West Tennessee and an East Tennessee consultant who do the same thing for all those counties also. Okay. I'll just do this so that everybody can get a look. So it's just a little disclaimer that at this point in time, we are not funded by the State Opioid Abatement Council, so anything I'm saying is not representing them or their perspective. And it's based on the knowledge as best we understand it today. I'm not going to dwell on this for too long, but just to give you a sense of the big picture with this funding, it's referred to as a three-bucket approach. So the National Opioid Settlement, you have a chunk of it. Let's see if I can get my colors right here. I can't even see the colors from that angle. So they sort of darker orange or red, the 15% there. When that comes to Tennessee, that goes into the state's general fund. What is the state doing with that money? I do not know. We hope good things, but I could not tell you what's going on with that money. The orange-yellow color, that 15% is the subdivision fund. That's part of the money that comes direct to counties, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. Then the other 70% goes to the State Opioid Abatement Council, and we'll talk a little bit more about them in a moment. Over here, this next circle, by the way, everybody, I'll send this and make sure that everybody has the presentation, and then if you have questions after the fact as well, feel free to reach out to me for clarification. But in this circle, this is taking this big chunk that the State Opioid Abatement Council has, and they subdivide it again. And so they have a percentage there that also goes directly to the counties. And then they hold back a big chunk over here, which they give out in their annual competitive grants. And again, we'll talk about each of those. But just to give you a bit of a sense, the pie is broken down multiple times. Okay. It's like it was designed to be confusing. The two pots of money that come to the county directly, which are the pots of money that you will be dealing with. The county is required to put those into two accounts. Again, this is mainly a county finance thing. You don't need to memorize this. But they have two accounts. The money that comes directly from the State Opioid Abatement Council is supposed to go into an interest-bearing account. The interest that is earned on that account is also supposed to follow the rest of the money and go to abatement efforts. So that interest should not be being used for other things, just for those efforts. The money that comes from the National Opioid Organization Brian Greer that comes to the county, that does not need to be in an interest-bearing account. It can be, but it is not required. If I am confusing you yet, just stop me. This is stuff you really don't need to get into the weeds on that much.
The main thing is just that you have two separate pots of money, which, I mean, I know you all have two separate pots of money. It'll be revenue numbers coming in, so Roseanne, you would see that from the commission side.
So let's talk about the first pot of money. So this is coming from the National Opioid Abatement Organization, Brian Greer. This pot of money comes directly to your county, so comes to county finance, goes into the account. This pot of money, there are no time restrictions on this. You do not have to allocate it in a certain time. You do not have to spend it in a certain time. With this pot of money, you can use it for future efforts, looking forward. How do we address overdoses going forward in the future? But you can also, the county does have the option to reimburse itself for efforts that were done in the past. However, any of these activities must be identified in a document called Exhibit E, which is going to become the document that you look at the most, and we'll make sure you'll get a copy of that. Because everything that you decide to fund, you have to be able to identify it within that Exhibit E document, because the mayor will be asked to report on that. So,
And I'll just say, the number one question we get asked is, you know, our autopsy number's gone way up. Can we use this for autopsies? No.
No.
Because, you know, the idea is, it is for
It's already been done.
yeah,
Prevention.
it's
And
for
then in your-
prevention.
That's the main divider we're looking for, right? Things that have already happened, money spent on that, and things.
Yeah,
We're
well,
trying-
you
trying
wanna,
to-
what you wanna look at is, you know, who's here with us and what are we doing to help those
Yeah,
people?
right.
And not look at what's happened, you know.
Yeah,
And-
so even though it's allowable to reimburse in here, there are only certain things that you could reimburse for.
Got it.
But I do not recommend reimbursing yourself. One, it's a bit of a fiscal nightmare going back and trying to figure that out and making sure it was identifiable. But the other thing is, the reality is in your county is you have people overdosing and dying today. And that's an expense that's being incurred at the county today. So it would seem kind of crazy to take money and put it in the past when you need it right now to save lives.
Right.
So that would be my recommendation. For what it's worth, is that reimbursement was an option. It just, I have yet to see anybody actually do it, even though initially there's kind of like, it just does not make a lot of common
I
sense.
mean, what is a purpose that you could conceive of that they would use that money for?
Well, again, you would go to Exhibit E, and we would need to really look through that and find something that's identifiable. And that would not be that easy to do, actually.
Well,
It would take a
that's
little
my
bit of
point.
work to figure out what exactly did you do and is it allowable?
Yeah.
So much so that I can't even think of anything right off the top of my
Well,
head.
I mean,
so-
the most obvious things are gonna be probably things related to the jail and maybe inmates at the jail.
Yeah.
But even then, how would you prove what percentage of that was, you know, opioid related and that kind of thing? So, like he said, most counties are looking at from this day forward.
Right.
Yeah.
What can we do? Because even like the autopsy thing, you know, the way you instead of looking back, you reduce costs by preventing future autopsies.
So past incurred obligations, we shouldn't spend a lot of time on it.
I don't recommend it.
I mean, I'm not asking you for opinion, but
Well, that's my opinion. I don't
asking
care
you
to
to
tell you. I mean, that's my
agree
opinion.
with me.
I
Right.
think, because, you know, here's the thing. I mean, the citizens are gonna show up at his door and hold him accountable, you know, for what this committee did. And obviously, I think he's gonna wanna say, again,
Would you like to use this projector on that whiteboard?
Do you
It
want a
would make life a
projector?
lot easier.
Yeah, would you, if we can pause long
Because
enough?
otherwise I'm gonna be doing a lot of this.
Yes.
Probably need to set it in the middle of this, somewhere in this table. There's that power on the end of that table, I think.
Here's
Hey Heather, how you doing?
I'm good, how are you doing?
Let's see, that's gonna go to the laptop.
Let's go to
There's
this
the
one.
power.
Okay.
Are we gonna have enough cord, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
good, or should I move to this and then we try to pull the table closer? Let's see. Let's see. I gotta get it on the other side of that chair. There we go. Sorry. Here's,
I thought this might be a watch around.
yeah, that's better.
Yeah. All right, let's move this chair for a minute. All right, so we need to go to this.
This is my able-bodied IT person, Cindy Reagan, doing what she does best.
Well, it's easy to spot the people who really know what they're doing. As soon as they come into the room, it's like, we know who's really in charge.
I hate to interrupt, but.
That's what she wants.
That's much, yeah, that's make life much.
Okay,
And we can keep the chair out of the way for now. I'm happy to stand while doing this.
okay, so this will just go to your HDMI.
Thank you.
Here, Trevor, I can drive your car. Here's the back. No.
I mean, I'm happy with standing up if you're all in favor.
It'll have
Right
to
over
heat
in
up in a
toes.
second. There you go.
Alright, here, Trevor.
Doesn't it have a drop leg on
I've never used this, Dennis.
Miss Lisa.
Want to be in grandma.
it? Oh,
I think it will be.
there we go.
Or something like that.
It's kinda got me freaked
So is it
out.
kinda, will it adjust?
You, yes. Was it too high?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's what I keep saying.
Still a little high in it. Okay.
There you go.
Pretty good.
That's
That's
pre-
good,
pretty
yeah.
good right there, Cindy.
Okay, now let's get the focus, it's just a little bit blurry.
There you go.
How's that?
Perfect.
Right.
You saved the day.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Cindy.
Lock this up in your office tonight, please.
Sure.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna make my exit, just, excuse me.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll just write this one down. I got keys to get out of there, but I'm
You
not
need to
gonna
take a
do it.
bow before you leave.
Okay.
I'm just now seeing the little drawing at the top, which is not on my slide. That's just, for a moment I panicked. It was like, what?
Do you wanna sit right here and I'll
No, I'm good if you're okay. I've been
Yeah.
driving all day, so I'm happy to stand
Okay.
for a little bit. If it's not distracting. Okay, so Brian Greer, one of the pots of money, comes directly to the county, no time restrictions on this pot of money. Future efforts or reimbursement in the past, but again, don't recommend going down that reimbursement unless you really know what you're doing and you can really identify something really, really solid. But again, if you take money for the past, then you're potentially shortchanging yourself for efforts that need to happen today. So if that is right to go, just go in with your eyes open. Okay. So I think we mentioned, or Heather mentioned, the settlement is going on for 18 years. So these are the projections that we have for this pot of money, okay? As you can see, very obvious what happens to this money as you go along the 18 years. It's very easy to tell. It starts to get less and less and less and less. The same with every single county in the state. You will notice that the money it's very obvious to notice that it's much higher on the front end. That is mainly because Walmart settled up front and decided we're getting all of our money out there, we're being done with this process. Now, what's my caution when seeing that is it's nearly a little bit exciting, if you will, to have a nice big pot of money to do a lot of efforts on the front end, especially if community members see these amounts of money being advertised. They might get it into their head that you're gonna have this money every year ongoing. That is not the case. So what I'm saying with that is be careful what you build. If it needs to be sustained year on year, and the community is going to keep on coming back to you, they need to understand you're not going to have these resources. So most counties, and we have a template application form if you want to use it and adapt it, we specifically ask how will you sustain this effort rather than coming back to the committee every year. So that's really to try and get them thinking about this. And again, these are settlement funds. This is not a federal grant. This was never meant to solve the whole crisis. This was for a specific issue around a settlement. So people also get a little confused and think it's supposed to fix everything. As you can see, not going to happen. So this is the 18 years. At the top, you'll see subdivision allocation 0.895355168, whatever. Every county is given a percentage of the overall settlement funds, and that is based on a calculation that we'll talk about in just a little while. So every county has that calculation, which then tells how it's divided up. Any questions on that? Okay. Behind the scenes, here's just a little glimpse of what's going on. Well, we've got those bars going on. You have multiple companies who are settling in behind each of those bars with the multiple amounts. We've got the likes of Walmart who are settling all up front. We've got others who are going to do weird things like, we're going to do a payment in year 2, and then we're going to do another payment in year 7. For you as a committee, that makes it a bit of a nightmare for trying to do projections if people are settling in odd times. There is nothing we can do about that, and that is why we explicitly say that these are estimates based on what we know today. Actually, this is about to change in that one of the big distributor companies just settled this week, so I think it's over 600 million, so their money's going to be going into the pot. Now, 600 million, whenever it's divided across the nation, is not going to make any major shifts in your amounts, but every dollar is helpful. So you can see a little bit just behind here, we try to keep our eye on what's going on.
May I interrupt, Trevor? Is it possible for you to pull the chair back up there, sit down, and be speaking into the microphone? This is one of the biggest complaints that Coffee County government gets with their online streamed meetings, is that the viewers cannot hear what the presenters are saying. So I appreciate
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
Appreciate you doing that.
Well, nobody has ever complained about me being quiet.
Nor I.
So this is just to give you an idea what's going on. We try to keep our eye on this, so if there are any changes, we will try to make those changes. We will send those along to you if there's any major updates. Yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of work just tracking this behind the scenes. So what I would say on that front is rely on your county finance person to tell you exactly how much came into the county and exactly how much you received. Again, because we have estimates, they will have seen the check, they will have put it in the account, so they will have the exact amount. Okay, pot number 2 that comes to the county. So these are direct county funds that come from the State Opioid Abatement Council. These are the ones that go into an interest-bearing account. The interest is supposed to go with the funds. Okay, there are time restrictions with this pot of money. This one's important because this is probably the most pressing pot of money for you to deal with. Because you probably have a deadline coming up around the end of February, beginning of March next year with these. You have 2 years to allocate the funds and then another 2 years to have that fund spent down. So 4 years total. Of course, every year you receive a new batch of money, that clock starts ticking on that over again. So you're going to have to be tracking with that. A lot of counties are in the position right now where they're trying to figure out and getting their first round taken care of before that deadline that comes up next year. Because you're working with us on this as well, if you feel like you need a little bit more time, the Opioid Abatement Council has said that if that deadline needs to be extended a little bit and you're making a good faith effort to get everything organized, you can communicate with them and talk to them about that. We would all rather see a good thing well done rather than just rushing to get money out the door. So I can continue to work with you all on that as you need. So allocated, we did have conversations about what is the definition of allocated. What do you mean? Does that mean this committee just decides? Or who? The working definition right now is the recommendations have been made and the county commission has signed off on those recommendations. That's allocated. Okay. And then the funds go out to wherever, and then they've got 2 years to spend those funds down. Okay. If for any reason there needed to be an extension of the period of those funds, you would need to talk with the Opioid Abatement Council and explain why something happened, something didn't get spent on in time, we need a little bit more time. So just open communication with them about that. And if you're tracking with the performance of anybody you have funded anyway, you shouldn't be finding out at the last minute the money's not being spent. You should be pretty aware beforehand. And again, Exhibit E, here it is again. Everything that you fund, you should be able to identify in Exhibit E, and we'll talk more about that document in just a little bit. You look like you had a question.
No.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. So two pots of money, slightly different rules with each one.
We call those restricted and a little less restricted. One's very, very restricted, one's a little less restricted.
Yeah. So here are the projections for that pot of money. You will automatically notice I'm not giving you 18 years, I'm giving you 4. The reason for that is the State Opioid Abatement Council will be recalculating the amount they give you every 4 years. So we cannot do a projection beyond your current 4 years at this time because we don't know what that's going to look like. Again, at the top, you can see you've got a percentage. It's different from the other percentage we looked at. But this is our estimates based on what they have said and your calculations for 23 through 26. Again, you can see there's a drop-off happens. Beyond that, I honestly can't tell you what that's going to look like at this point. But again, as you work with community members, if they start having the expectation that it's going to be the same high amount all along, that is not the case. Judge, did you have a question?
No, I'm making some calculations, sorry.
Okay. Oh, and just on that, at this point in time, in the county, you should have your 2023 payment should be here and your 2024 payment should be here. So both those years are here. The deadline for your 2023 payment under the ones that comes from the Opioid Abatement Council, that's the one that timely, you need to make decisions on that. But there is nothing stopping you from going ahead with your 2024 funds and also getting those out into the community. If you want to get it all going at the same time, that is up to you. If you want to separate those and handle those separately, that is also up to you. We've seen people do it in both ways. Behind the scenes, again, just whenever they're doing those percentages and scoring your county, this is just how they weight the different criteria for coming up with your percentage. So it's based on fatal overdoses, non-fatal overdoses, opioid prescriptions, and your population. That is how they calculate your percentage. And obviously, they're basing this on opioid prescriptions, and when we look at some of the data right here on the right, your opioid prescriptions just drop off. Every single county in the state looks exactly the same. The public health person that I am is not a fan of this chart because as those prescription numbers were dropping off, our fentanyl numbers were taking off.
They just found something else.
Exactly. Right. So unfortunately, that piece of the picture is missing, in my opinion, which is how badly impacted are you by illicit substances, because everybody's prescriptions have dropped off. That is not the problem we're primarily dealing with now. But this is what we have to work with, whether we like it or not. And again, that goes back to the origins of this is about prescription pills, and that's what the settlement was about.
Prescription-based opioid abuse, that's we're 10 years behind that.
Oh yeah, it's anywhere from 2016, 2018 was when we saw the major drop off of that. Yeah. They also have a calculation for your fatal and non-fatal overdoses over there. These are taken from state numbers. These numbers are based on residents who had non-fatal and fatal overdoses. So like in a hospital setting, per se, if you get somebody who comes from outside of a county who's a resident somewhere else, it's not going to show up here. So you could potentially have more deaths in the county, but they weren't residents of the county. Or you could have potentially people who are from your county or resident here who died in Davidson County or Rutherford County, but they will be in here. So it's not perfect, but it's the best we have to work with on that. But I just wouldn't confuse these charts with what's actually going on in your county. That is not what this data tells you. So the state will recalculate the amount of funds that you get every 4 years. So the next calculation will be coming up before 2027. We don't have an exact date on that. If we can get one, we will let you know. But I would point out that the state has held back 2% of their overall funds. So if any county happens to gather up some of their own data and you believe that you have a different picture of what's going on, you can try and make the argument to try and get some of that 2% added to your overall funds. There's a very short window to do that while they're recalculating. Otherwise, that 2% gets rolled back into the main funds again. But as we get closer to that recalculating period, if you think that you want to try and gather up some information and go for some of that 2%, let me know and I'll happily see if I can assist you make that argument. I don't know of anybody who's done it so far. So the reporting requirements on both these funds, you, the committee, will not be reporting. The mayor gets to report on these. So the mayor will typically get an email. So one from Brian Greer, that's the National Opioid Settlement Organization, that's the Orange Subdivision Fund. The mayor will only report on that if you're using the funds for something that is not approved, which puts a lot of trust right there to report back that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. But that's the way it works. If you're doing everything by the book and everything is going by Exhibit E, then the mayor does not have to send any report. You just say, nothing, we're all good, we're doing it right. No email back. The money that comes from the State Opioid Abatement Council, that has a different reporting structure. It comes in twice a year, typically March and September. They are going to ask, what strategies from Exhibit E did you fund and by how much? That's currently the reporting for that, which is relatively simple. The state could potentially change that to get more information eventually. That's really up to them. But right now they're going to want to know what category by how much. So that's again why that Exhibit E is really important, because if you can't answer those questions and you put money into something else, the state does have the right to ask for that money back. That has not happened so far, thankfully. Everybody's been doing really good work. So, as we go towards talking about Exhibit E, there are core strategies within that document. So, because we're not going to, it's 16 pages of strategy, so we're not going to cover all of that right now. But just to give you an idea of the core strategies that are within that. You've got naloxone or other reversal agents that work like that. MAT, services for pregnant postpartum women, neonatal abstinence syndrome, warm handoff and recovery services, treatment for incarcerated population, prevention programs, syringe programs, research, data collection. So there's a broad range within that of treatment, recovery, prevention, more on the research end of things. You should have no problem finding great ideas in that document which are fundable within your community. So there are two forms of this Exhibit E. This is the main one I typically use is this one, which gives you more of an expanded language around it. Why do I use that one? Just because if you read the language carefully on here, it will say things, fund programs like these ones, and then it'll list 4 or 5 programs underneath. But that word like is important because you might want to tailor a program more specifically to your county versus something that's a nationally recognized program, which you just can't implement here for one reason or another. So when you read the bullet points of the programs, read the language carefully, like, do I have to do one of these, or can it be like one of these? So as you go through Exhibit E, you can look for that language very carefully. If you get stuck on something, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to get on a call with you, brainstorm it, see where it fits. Is it reasonable? Can we make that argument? The Tennessee Opioid Abatement Council did more of a table format, which is nearly like a quick reference one, which is really, really helpful. So I would nearly start with this and see if it's really easily identifiable, and you can just use this version. If you're struggling to identify it really easy, go to the other one and start looking at that more nuanced language. Once you spend a little time in Exhibit E, it'll become pretty straightforward. You'll start to get a sense of what's in there and what's not in there. Any questions on that? Okay. So in the imaginary world where you have successfully given out your money to community agencies, and several agencies have not been funded and they really could use some funds, and you're out, you've done what you could. The state, if you remember, still retains most of the opioid settlement funds. So once a year, they open up a grant process for communities to try and apply for this. So anybody can apply for it, counties, nonprofits, anybody.
Is that the cycle 2 that just closed?
Exactly.
Okay.
So the cycle 2 just closed. Cycle 1, they gave 80 million. I think this year they were giving out 20 million. So again, you can see the marked changes. The State Opioid Abatement Council have also been just figuring out what are their priorities, what do they want to see funded. So that, you know, they're a work in progress as well as they figure out these processes. But you can direct your community organizations who, if you just run out of funds, let them know about this and tell them you can go here. It is once a year, but it's something. It's there to be applied for. If you don't apply for it, somebody else will. If you have a community organization that wants to look at it, I will try to help them if I have capacity. If I can't write the grant for them, but if they want some thoughts or advice, you can point them to me, and as long as I've got a little bit of time, I'll try to point them in the right direction. These funds, however, are reimbursement, which is also a bit of an uphill battle if you're a small agency applying for these. If you can't upfront the funds until you get reimbursed, that's going to be a barrier. So smaller agencies, that's going to be really, really hard on. But at this point in time, that's the way the rules are. But you can see even here with the time frames that by the time you apply, the portal closes on December 13th. It takes till July until they score them all and then let you know who's got the awards. And then your project start dates are January 2026. So a whole year has passed from when you apply until you actually get your program up and running. So that's also something people need to be thinking about. That's a long time frame to get your money in and then get a program up and running. At this point in time, just with their discussions, they've been trying to give priority to prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery support. Also looking for where multiple agencies are collaborating and also where counties are trying to collaborate as well together. There are some restrictions that are put in place, a $1 million maximum for single county projects and a $3 million maximum for multiple county projects. A quick glimpse at just the broad categories they funded last year. Just a breakdown of that. You can see treatment and recovery really, and actually primary prevention were really emphasized with a lot of their funding.
Recovery support, aftercare, pretty much.
Yeah.
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 What about primary prevention? That's a pretty good chunk. What is that? What, I mean,
Prevention coalitions?
Yeah, it'll be arranged. A lot of it'll be prevention coalitions or just prevention programs of different kinds. Even in schools, things like that. You can have prevention programs up and
So
running.
I've got a county that's given a big chunk of their money to the schools to try to,
okay, those are gonna be the main three right there.
That's the main three that the state awarded, and again, that's based on the applications that they get as well. There are certainly aspects of addressing overdoses in the community who I would like to see applying for more of the funds, but it's hard. It's harder for them to find categories within this. That's law enforcement and EMS, the first
How do you
responders.
translate that into?
There are some categories in Exhibit E for first responders, but they're pretty minimal. One of the ones that a couple of counties are talking about is to do with the associated trauma that first responders have had to deal with in addressing the drug crisis. One county that I've been working with are particularly looking at like a mental health counseling piece to ramp that up for first responders for retention purposes.
Extra education for first responders.
Yeah, if you look in Exhibit E, you're going to find that as well.
All
Yeah.
right.
We just don't see a lot of them applying for that, and I think part of that is first responders are nearly trained to do your job and just get on with it. That's not necessarily a good way to go through
Yeah.
through life. It's
Yeah, see where we can,
yeah. So I encourage you to think about them, because I typically find that the police and EMS don't necessarily raise their hand and say, actually, we need help.
Well, they're doing the same thing in schools with teachers, trying to help them to,
oh, yeah.
you know, recognize, you know, kids early on
Yeah.
who, you know, need assistance, and then teachers,
Yeah.
helping teachers.
So just some thoughts, and this is just based, a lot of it's based on my experience of working with other counties as well. You can absolutely go the approach of, we give out applications in the community, and whoever screams the loudest gets funded. You can do that as long as it's allowable. But I really encourage you, if at all possible, to see if you can get some data to put on the table to guide your decisions. So up here, I put some suggestions. One is that the hospitals, they know a lot. They know the overdose information, they have a sense of substances that are out there in the community that are impacting people. So if there's any data that's available that could be put on the table to guide decisions, again, not patient identifiable, that is not what we're talking about, just trends, what's going on. The data that you can get from the state that's publicly available is typically a year or more old, so it's not particularly useful for trying to address the problem as it changes. And this crisis changes about every 6 months as we get different drugs coming in and all sorts. EMS and law enforcement, again, they're on the front lines, they are responding in your community, they know the neighborhoods, the zip codes, the most impacted areas, high-risk individuals. They know people who refuse to go to the hospital. They have insights on what it might take to convince those people to do something different. So it's really, really helpful if they're able to share that information in a way that you can get a sense of what's really going on in the community versus what we think is going on in the community. Because sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes the overdoses are happening in places that you weren't aware of. The last and the most tragic out of all the data sets is the medical examiner data. What's really helpful about this data is it conclusively tells you what is killing people, what's in their bodies, not what they thought they were taking or what they thought they were purchasing. This is what they got. And I work extensively with people in Davidson County, especially with the narcotics unit, and the amount of people who think that they're buying something, and then when we test the drugs or they end up dying and we look at their records, that is not what they're getting. So if you really want to keep tabs on where do these funds need to go to really make an impact, having that kind of information on the table can be pretty revealing. Doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all right off the bat. You don't have to have it for your next meeting or anything like that, but it's a work in progress that will help guide you.
Here's what I've seen a lot of this. I've seen a person, they'll take an illegal substance and they'll go buy a grocery store and they'll go to one of these markets and they'll buy kratom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a mixed
Yeah.
overdose, right? How do you what do we look to track that number?
Well, I mean, one of the things,
Medical examiner,
if you get medical examiner data on toxicology, I guarantee you're going to see that show up.
You know,
in
those are two
multiple
substances
overdoses.
that
Yeah.
might be non-lethal in themselves, but together.
Right, and you can start really going down rabbit holes with this on combinations, and so
That's what I'm getting at. The possibilities are endless.
right, and so I encourage you to look at the broad trends. I
Okay.
discourage you to start going down the rabbit holes of trying to understand all of the chemical concoctions and how they work. So just look for your broad trends and how they're impacting the community. The only way I would say to go down that path is if you set up a specific program where there are people dedicated to responding to that kind of, those changes in combinations,
That's where
where they would need to know that. That is the only time. I don't think you guys should get into that level. That's nearly a whole program in its own right.
All right.
Yeah. And I would also say work with law enforcement if you start going down that path, because one, they'll either know about these substances already, or they will need to know what you're finding out. Because we do find that on some cases, law enforcement will know about substances that the public health world don't, or public health sometimes find out through other ways that something's coming into the community, and law enforcement just happen to not have seized
You know,
it
we've got a
yet.
we have a unique situation here called Bonnaroo. So we know
Yes.
about
Yeah,
we know about
exactly.
the drug, we know about the,
Yeah,
emerging drugs before anybody else
Exactly.
does.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
right.
We do.
yeah.
I can tell you the hospital has an addiction clinic across the street, so we actually care for opioid addicts. We help people that are pregnant deliver babies safely, so we have an entire program that we deal with. And when we've looked at it, there seem to be two paths. We either hit it at the school, remember we had tried to get some funding for the schools to go in and identify those students, or you find the people that have been arrested early on, you get them into a support program so that they're not back in the jails, because those are the recurring
Yeah.
ones. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what's costing.
Yeah.
So this might be something that if you're looking at those first people that are incarcerated, getting them into a program and helping them, I mean, we use Suboxone, that's what we use to
Yeah, yeah.
get people off of opioids.
And that is, I mean, that's a very evidence-based approach of looking at touch points. Where do people come in, and where can we intercept them and do an intervention, because we kind of know the path that they're on.
The people we see in the ER aren't the people from the school. It's the people that weren't touched in the school 10 years later, that are, you know, before they get to the jail.
So there's a great example as well of data and information at work.
Yeah, the data's there. It's already there in the court system. So whether it was in the old drug court system or whether it's through social workers through the defense bar, the data's there.
Yeah.
And, you know, between that and what's going on in the hospitals, that information will be there. All we have to do is reach out. Matter of fact, I know it's already there because I've seen it.
Yeah.
And as far as what law enforcement goes, we have that information. I mean, just as soon as it hits the streets, I'm in contact with every agency and around, and when I hear the conversations of what's
Yeah.
being sold and abused, I mean, I know of 3 fentanyl overdoses to law enforcement agents in the last 6 months that put them in the hospital, that they had to be,
Yeah.
you know, and that's a terrible thing. And you're right, the education on that part of it, but the recidivism of keeping people that are coming into the court system, if we can put them into a program to get them where they're not doing this again.
And the success rate, and this is just one particular program, but it's heavy on counseling. It's heavy, you know, so
Yeah.
we have the data that supports that.
And,
And
and my experience is the first time don't fix it.
Yeah.
That you can come in and go to rehab that first time, and it don't fix it. It may take 2 or 3 times, and we need to have an open mind about that to say, I'm not gonna give you a chance and forget you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
And that's such a great point, just overall, is just understanding the nature of the problem.
Right.
That there are no silver bullets. There is no one pathway that fixes everything for everybody, and, yeah, being patient and understanding is part of the process. Yeah, I agree. I love it. You're already getting into ideas, so I don't think you're gonna have problems there, but,
My idea is getting most of this money to people, getting in front of people and talking to them. I mean,
yeah. And again, the biggest problem you're gonna have is you're not gonna have enough money to do everything. So, but
right.
in a bizarre way, it's gonna be great to pull all those ideas out and have them on one table and start talking about them, because you can look at other grants. There's DOJ grants out there, there's all sorts of things out there. Just very quickly, just some recommended strategies. Use funds to leverage funds. If there are existing programs that already do this kind of work, don't reinvent the wheel. Build onto it, leverage off of it, make the system better in the community rather than everybody doing the same thing over and over again. So getting a sense of what's already going on, what's working, what's not working, and then just thinking strategically about that. How can we make this money go as far as possible? Collaborate with other counties where possible as well. I repeatedly say this, the drug dealers don't just come up to your county line and be like, oh, I'm gonna change my behavior now. Neither do the drugs, neither do the users, people living with addiction. I mean, just what you name it. So whenever we act by our county lines, it's kind of, we're acting slightly at odds with the nature of the crisis. So if you have the opportunity in any way to work and collaborate with other programs across the county lines, that is something, again, where I think you can do more with less. Evaluate your programs, whatever you fund, and we have some templates that you can use for this, is you want to be getting some reports back to this committee on how that's going. Are you spending down? Are you going to be spending down in time? Do we need to reallocate that money rather than lose it? But you don't want to be in a position where you are continually funding something for 18 years that's not working because you weren't paying attention to it. Again, whenever lives are at risk, this money needs to be going to try and save those lives. And it's not enough money.
Well, and as I say, you don't have to fund something for the life of the program. Fund it for a year, and
Yeah.
then, you know, do an evaluation every year to see, and take new, applications, you know,
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah. And I think that's also just a good to set up front with any agency you're funding, that they understand. Again, with the funds dropping every year, that it, working year on year might be the best approach. Is like, yeah, you can't keep on relying on us. And then being transparent and seeking public input. That's what you're doing right now. It's most counties are doing it this way. Most have set up a committee. They're being transparent. They want everybody to know what's going on with the funds, where they're going, understanding that you don't have enough as well. So if people are complaining that they didn't get a piece of the pie, if they see these meetings, they'll know there isn't enough. So that's it. We do have a bunch of templates. So we've got an RFP, we've got grant application templates, scoring templates, budget templates, a workplace template, even a template contract that CTAS Legal put together for us. All of those you can use and adapt them as you see fit. So whenever we hand them over to you, you do whatever you want to do with them to make it work for you. At the end of the day, the process has to work for you. You've already got your board. This is usually a slide we put in before anybody's even forming it, but you're already doing a lot of this anyway. We do recommend that your board maybe has a little mission statement. Again, as your board changes over years, sometimes good to have something in place to always remind the new people of what it is you're doing and what you're not supposed to be doing. So feel free to take this and just pop your county name into it if you want. We just put this together because a lot of counties were saying, yeah, can you just help us put one together? So this is a template one. Feel free to use it if you wish.
And you're gonna share all this with us, you said, right?
Yes, so I'll send it to the mayor, and then I'm assuming he'll send it.
Well, as far as the Exhibit E, and that's the do's and don'ts, and that's not in this slideshow, but is it under the?
I
There's a
will,
link.
yeah, there's a little link, but I will
Okay,
send that as an
that's good.
attachment,
We didn't get it.
both versions
And,
of it.
and just to repeat, say again, that is the do's and don'ts of what we can and cannot put monies into.
Yeah, that's your Bible, if
Okay.
you will.
Good.
That's the one that really keeps you inside the rails that you're supposed to be in. That if you cannot fund it unless you can find it in that document. And some things are completely worthwhile, some things are amazing work, some people, it's a deserving cause. That's not what you're evaluating on. This is just, these are the rules, this is what we gotta spend
Sure.
it on, is one of these things. It's not a judgment on your program if we don't give you money, it's just we can't.
The other thing I would just caution, and I don't have a clue what boards and whatever y'all are on, but you know, obviously if you are on the board of a group who's applying for money,
Yeah.
that could throw you into a conflict of interest, so just
Yeah, let's be careful about that.
be careful about that.
Whenever you see that, what do you do? Just abstain from, of the vote on it within the group, or?
Yes, either that or, I mean, we've had one county where the person just went ahead and resigned from the committee because, you know, it was gonna be an ongoing thing and they just didn't want to every year be abstaining. So they just resigned from it.
I mean, we got a small enough board here, just to announce your conflict and abstain from voting.
Yeah.
We good with that, everybody?
Yes.
You know, if we had 24 people on the board, we could handle that a little better, but is that our agreement? Very good.
Is that the end of your presentation?
That is, the only other thing I would say is if you use the application form process, obviously you're scoring the applications, which adds another layer of Even if somebody has a conflict of
Right.
interest, it's, if you scored terribly, for any given reason,
Yeah.
as well, you shouldn't be surprised if the vote does not go your way. And you just know to do a better application next year.
Well, because you have the school, the hospital, the judicial, so everyone's kind of representing an area that all of these would touch.
Oh,
to
yeah,
be
and
honest.
each of those are worthwhile
Yes.
causes as well, they're really important, so, again, this is just where it gets difficult.
Yeah, I don't, whenever I see that, regardless of whether it was the school system, you being the subject expert in our part, if you was able to present it, even if you didn't vote on it, you're giving us the best good information we
Right.
can
I agree.
hear. And I think that's reasonable, personally. Now, y'all may disagree with that, and we would need to know that up front. But, I mean, even on any, because
Yeah, and those
you look at
conflicts
a,
always come up
Yeah.
after they're done and you can't fix them.
Right.
So be mindful of that on the front end,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I got a question. Do you differentiate between individuals that are involved in a 501c and just strictly private sector stuff?
In normal government operations, the answer to that would be yes.
Mhm.
But with this, the.
Even a 501c probably need to have full disclosure.
Yes,
I'd
regardless.
say so. Considering our history, yeah.
Y'all got any questions for him? You know, just not wanting to take over chair, I'm just speaking, okay?
No,
This,
believe me,
what I would
you're
like
gonna
to
have
say
help
is,
us out for a little
I consider my major, most important contribution to this program are these 5 individuals that I've picked. Handpicked, every one of you said yes. Didn't have to think about it, and I appreciate you guys accepting the position. I would like for, I'm always a stickler for procedural rules regarding committees, Robert's rules. Small committees are allowed to operate a little looser. This is a 5-member committee. I mean, somebody can throw out an idea, y'all can discuss it without a motion in a second. You can discuss it prior to, that's allowable. So that's not a problem, but I would like, when you guys are spending money, basically, and I would like for you guys to do a formal motion with a second, then just one more chance for discussion and actually take a vote. And as I said early in the meeting, every one of you come from a different sector, and use your expertise in that sector, not your favoritism, if I can put it that way. And I do appreciate every one of you being here and doing what you're doing.
I understand we have some immediacy about some fund, we have a deadline on disbursement of some funds, is that right?
There is, correct,
So your 2023 payment that came from the Opioid Abatement Council, that pot of money, you're coming up to the 2-year deadline for allocation.
Yeah.
Now, county finance would need to tell you exactly when
which
that
is
should-
next year.
Yeah, it'll be
Yes.
it'll be
We
early
have a
next year.
calendar year, or you said early next year?
It's 2 years from when you received it.
Okay,
So typically I say, get your finance person to say, when did the check come in the door? And that should give you a pretty good
Okay.
deadline. Most people, it seems to be around end of February, very beginning of March. But yeah, that's the one where you're trying to get an allocation.
So we
So-
need to prioritize where we need those funds to go,
yes.
right?
Yeah. Now, I would say if you don't have your open application process set up in time to do that, then you might want to look and see if there's another way you can do that little pot of money.
I would
for now.
encourage you guys
Put that
to
in.
set a meeting date, your
Yep.
next meeting date, which will, you guys discuss and establish procedure for application and how you accept application and all that. Consistency, I feel like, is real important. You don't want to just do an oral one this meeting and one on paper with checkpoints the next meeting. I would say, be consistent.
And the other thing I would add, I mean, probably if I were you all, I would look at the monies, when you talked about the 2 different, you had the Brown Greer money and the
abatement council money, I would look at how those have come in, make sure they're in the
And
pots,
get
they're,
the budget book right.
the
timeline.
the pots that they're supposed to be in, yeah, and remember, the one is, you do have the requirement to spend it. Now, you could have two different strategies for the two different pots of money, but, and some counties have kinda looked at that, but, it kinda takes away, putting the pots together, not the pots together, putting the monies together, kinda gives you more, a bigger stick.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, well, this, the Brown Greer money is
That's-
less restricted, so
that's
we're
my
gonna
thought,
spend
yeah,
it for a different purpose.
yeah.
I don't know that you have enough to really make a difference, whereas you put them together and they're all kind of for the more restricted purpose,
Yeah.
you probably get more.
And again, you also have that 23 and 24 payment together right now, so you've actually got a bigger pot of money from both as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, but just in your mind, the only one
But
that you're under
our
time.
deadline, our drop dead deadline for the disbursement of these funds is,
2 years from the day you receive it.
okay.
And that's for the opioid abatement council portion, that you've got those 2 years. The
So
other
that's
pot
gonna
of
put
money-
us in early next year,
How much is in that 23?
23, we received $292,030.
And that's not been given or allotted
Is
to
that
anyone
in
yet?
both?
No, 170, that is the Tennessee abatement. Which one passed remediation? Would that be
Let's see.
Brown Greer?
48991 is the Brown Greer, yeah. So this says you received 173,249 in 2023 in the Brown Greer money. And then in the opioid abatement, 292,030. So that was 2023.
And so by end of February, we need to have
we need to have
$473
cashable disbursement.
dispersed,
Not
Allocated.
dispersed, allocated.
allocated.
Yeah, yeah.
Allocated.
Well, just again, if you put the both pots together and you're treating it as a whole, you can go down that route, but just remember, it is that portion that came from the state opioid abatement council. That portion is the one you're under the gun
Yeah.
for. Now, if you're able to get the other money out at the same time, that's
I mean,
amazing.
for simplicity purposes, I think we ought to treat them as one fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
If
it's the
anybody-
292,030 is the portion
to
that
be
you
out-
have
has
to
to be
have
out.
Right.
allocated.
But we need to know when we actually received that, is that correct?
Yeah.
Isn't that the drop dead date?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would look, that's what I would do, is
Sounds
probably
like
go
end of
to
February.
the
Yeah.
budget office and ask for the dates that those monies
Gotcha.
came in.
Now, I will say this, that if you have a good faith plan going and for some reason you just can't get it out the door in that time frame, the mayor can let the state opioid abatement council know, let them know you're working with us.
That'd have to be something pretty unforeseen though, I would imagine.
Well, it's everybody's first year as well,
Sure.
and trying to get the meetings all mesh and whatever, so, again, I would hate for you to like rush and do something just really rash, don't do that.
That's actually what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, so I would do a good faith effort, see if you can make it happen, but if for some reason there's just no unavoidable way to get around that, just talk with the mayor, get the mayor to let the opioid abatement council know, we're doing it, we've got a plan, we're working with the SMART team and CTAS. We just have a little hitch, but we're gonna get it moved, and the opioid abatement council said that they will be okay with that.
All right.
Cause you are not the only counties doing this for the first time and getting your systems up in place, so.
Have there been a lot of other counties that are up and going and they've had this together for 6 months or
Oh,
more?
for- yeah, for
Some of them, yeah,
2023.
some of them are already doing their round two and getting those out the door. They moved quickly and got things set up. And then there are others who are just like you, they're just getting it set up now. You are not alone in
Do
that
you-
regard.
Do you have a county that you think is a great poster child for?
Closest, I'm gonna just answer that, the closest that I think here is probably Marshall County, would you?
Marshall County, Bedford County,
Bedford County.
as well. They're doing some great work as well, just in their process, and you know, they did things like one of their meetings, they invited the local newspaper to sit in the meeting because they wanted them to help get word out about the grant applications and promote that, and so they really embraced the local media to try and help let people know what was going on. but they're on run too as well. Yeah, there's a range. And different people are doing it differently, like Rutherford County, they, have been doing their process through MTSU. Not, again, they got a much bigger pot of money and they're able to contract with MTSU to do that work.
Right.
So that's how they're able to do that. But is this something that you guys can do? Absolutely. Yeah, this is something you can do. But Bedford County and Marshall County as well, Mayor Canning over there has been doing a great job with his committee. Yeah. So if you ever want us to connect you up with one of them to just even talk about their processes, but all of them are using the same templates as well. So they've been using those and adapting them.
I'm not about reinventing the wheel.
So I'm at your service. Obviously I've got all of Middle Tennessee, but as much as I can, I'm happy to come down and be at your meetings. I'm happy to answer phone calls, emails, whatever it takes to try and get you on track. Some counties are great. It takes a couple of meetings and after that they're like, yeah, we don't need to talk to you anymore. We got this.
Do you have a business card?
Mm-hmm. I'm starting to run short.
I'm
of
just
these
here to try to
now,
keep
so.
you out of an audit finding.
Let me see if I got some more.
Bravo.
But yeah, I'll get, we'll make sure you all have the presentation and we'll make sure that you have Exhibit E. And then just, yeah, let me know if you've got questions.
All right, today's the 18th of December.
Do you guys consider a 5-member committee a good size?
I think it's a great size.
I think it's a great size, and I think it's not just about the size, it's about the perspectives that you
Yeah.
bring, and you've got education,
We
the
got the
hospital,
medical,
legal
we got the
system,
school,
and law
You
enforcement.
know, we got, yeah.
Yeah, and having, you know, a commissioner serves as a great
And a
liaison
trailer truck salesman?
between this committee and the commission to keep them abreast of what's going on, so, I mean,
I'm down to my last
I'm
one.
impressed.
Thank you.
So,
We're not under the gun, but, you know, the clock's ticking. Would you all consider reforming here on January the 22nd to discuss further disbursement of the fund?
Yes.
Is that a Wednesday?
Yeah, that's a Wednesday.
I want y'all please,
And if that's not a good day, let me know.
look at meeting times. 4 of you are right here all day long, pretty much. Roseanne does work in Laverne.
Yeah.
It's the hardest, she has the hardest time making early meetings because of her job. If you guys consider maybe a little bit later than 4 o'clock for her,
Sure.
I would ask you to do that. Roseanne, you just sort of tell the people what you recommend, that
Well-
that you know you're gonna be here, cause I want 5
Well,
members here every
6
time.
o'clock is probably too late for y'all, isn't it, or is it? It's hard, you gotta look, there's other meetings, but not usually on Wednesday.
Yeah,
I can do
The only thing I can
six.
think of is church.
Yeah,
You know,
I do
everybody
go
goes
to
to church
church,
on
I do
Wednesday,
go to
yeah.
church on
Yeah,
Wednesday.
I'm actually fixing.
But if we hit that,
to
if we hit this at 5:30, could
Yeah.
you be out by church?
Yeah,
Everybody
5:30
okay with
would
that?
be
We have
doable.
some consensus there.
I'll be here.
Would that give you enough time to get
Yeah.
down here?
I'll just make a point of being here, yep, that's good.
Okay, all right, I mean, we can do it later if you want.
No, cause I go to church on Wednesday, so.
These meetings would
5:30,
involve at
we'll meet
least-
for about 1 hour, and then,
At least an hour.
okay. Yeah, I need to be here.
Keep in mind, there might be meetings that you have 2 or 3 or 4 people sitting in here wanting stuff. It's very possible. I've had that many already been in my office wanting it,
Wanting to.
want
apply.
money, yeah.
I've gotten a little heat myself.
During the next month, do we need to, or how do we need to
That's-
come up with an application to go ahead and get it?
The
Send it.
link that you're gonna get, they have example templates, and it'd be a good idea if you just pick one out and say, this one we're gonna use.
I
You
mean,
know, well, if-
That's my suggestion.
Between now and the next time, if we create that application, and if you or should we take and have those set out somewhere where if somebody was looking for them, they could pick them up? Because we, literally, if we're meeting on
Yeah,
January
the mayor-
22nd,
the
within
mayor's
30
office
days,
will
we've
have
gotta have
that.
some money out the door.
Right.
We sure do.
We need to be able to recognize who needs this money and fairly quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, my issue with this is I'm a conservative person. Don't ask me for money if you ain't ready. Cause I'm not that I'm gonna be looking at their budget, but I don't give money just cause you say you need it. You know, you better come in and say, this is what we wanna give it for, and this is what we're gonna produce. And you know, I just don't feel like, you better have some stats behind you to say, hey, we can do these things, and this is what we've done in the past. You know, and so that's a tough thing to do when you only got a month to give money out, but it's also, I think we got a big responsibility to put the money where it's going to help the best and save lives.
But we are a little bit
We
time
are.
constrained.
Yeah.
We are. It's-
I'll find out the date that we got it. That's what this all hinges on.
It is.
What I would just
We
add-
got it in
Feel confident that if we have
2023,
everything set
we
up,
just don't know
go
what
back and
day
ask
in
for additional
2023.
time For allocating the money.
That's
If
what,
we, if we're working on the application, if we
Yeah.
have the committee and we could say, hey, we're gonna need an extra 60 days,
yes,
Good.
yes.
and that would
Yeah.
give us a little more time.
Yes, and then also just, you know, if you add the pots together and you get that bigger amount of money, even if you prioritize the amount that's under the time constraint, and then give yourself an extra little bit of time to make a decision on the other ones. Because if you try and approve all the applications in one go, that's pushing yourselves really hard. So if you have that ability to say, well, we're gonna prioritize for this year only, because you're under a time constraint, let's prioritize that chunk, let's get that gone. And then you can give yourself a little bit more breathing space for the pot of money where there are no time constraints, and then just move that as quick as you can. But once you get into the flow of this, once you get this year out of the way, you shouldn't be under that pressure anymore.
And we're gonna know, I mean, this is a committee that's in touch with people out there, and they know what's going
Yeah.
on. So we're gonna be able to develop our own ideas of
Yeah.
what the need is actually gonna be. I feel like.
Yeah.
I know I know you are, I know
Yeah.
you are, I know I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah. You're gonna do great.
Very good.
Thank y'all for being here.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank
welcome.
you.
Good presentation.
So, we've, committee members, start, putting out feelers as to what you think the need's gonna be. Solicit applications for money, and, we'll agree to reset this to the 22nd of January, 5:30. All right? Very good.
I'd say between now and then, if we do print those applications out and get them put into the Coffee County name, we might wanna email them out to, I guess I can come up and,
Yeah.
we can figure out how to do that and then get that emailed out to everyone in case they wanna hand those out and have somebody fill them out.
And I
Is
do
there
know s-
multiple templates or just one?
We
pretty
just
good?
have the one.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
it's up to you, when you read it
Okay.
through it, you can say, we don't need that, but we don't wanna do that bit, or we wanna keep this, or we wanna
Okay.
change it.
Right.
But a lot of counties are just putting their logo on it and just using it pretty
Okay.
much as
figured
is.
that's
And
what
it,
we
and
would
it
do.
covers a lot of things like, you know,
But
track
how are
record,
you
you know.
educating the people that are applying for these grants? Because when you hear, I mean, there's limits to what we can do. The last thing you want is to say, here's our application,
Yeah.
submit it, and then say, oh wait, you didn't meet the criteria. So that's in there, and how would we get that out? Which
Yeah.
will keep a lot of things off of you, because they're gonna come to you first.
A lot of them.
In the
they
application
are.
form, it does ask about which allowable category you're
Okay.
applying for this. Now, whenever I look at applications that come in other counties, I get the sense that people aren't reading very carefully, or they just check all.
Yes.
Which is not that helpful for you, because then it puts you in that position of, well,
They
we've
know
got to
the
figure it out.
grants are out there, and they've been kinda waiting. And
Right.
They perceive it one way, and it may be another way.
I don't think there's any way to get around to some degree of messiness in that regard. I don't know if you've really got time to do an education thing, and even if you did, I don't think some of the people who are gonna apply are gonna show up
Big
for that.
difference,
Okay.
yes.
But I appreciate what you're saying.
So are these organizations that will be applying for the grants, or are they individuals?
Well,
Both.
could be both.
But
Yeah.
typically, you're gonna see organizations.
Not
yeah.
I mean, I already know.
Because once
several,
you're
you know,
to contract with an individual, they're
Coffee
gonna
County
have to have
Health
some sort of
Council has
program or
Yeah.
nonprofit or
proposal.
something.
Okay.
that I know they're gonna
We
wanna
could
submit.
look at adding a link to the county website where somebody could click on that link and then pull up the
Yeah.
Exhibit E and be able to read it.
And that's what I was
Yeah, that-
gonna mention, and, so like I've been working with Maury County, and they have a page up for their settlement, they put a web page, and then they put those documents in there, with their application form as well, and, so people can just go there, and print it, so you don't have to keep on taking phone calls and
Yeah.
emails, and it's
Shoving
just
the
there.
door in people's
Yeah.
face.
There's some reinventing the wheel stuff right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When I said both, there has been an individual in my office that's wanting to start their own program, you know, and I
Yeah.
don't know.
I know who that is.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
well,
know.
you need people that wanna run halfway houses. I get
Yep.
people hitting me up on this stuff all
Yep,
the time.
yep, yeah.
That's what I was really asking about.
yeah.
Are the wheels turning in people's,
Mhm.
you know,
I'm sure
they
they
can't wait. And then it's gonna be, no, it's not for that, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's gonna depend on what would fit best for us, what would
Okay.
get the best results for our
But
county.
everybody here has been affected by this in one way or another, and they know what we need, right? Pretty much. So, I mean, as long as you're guided by that principle, we're gonna be all right.
And I really do, I come from a public health background, so the conversation you all had earlier, just where you were talking about touch points. You know, you see these people, they come through drug court, they come through the hospital, they come through the schools, I mean, they're engaged with law enforcement. You should have a pretty good sense where these people are, where there are opportunities to do something different
Yeah.
as well. And so, again, you can set priorities on what you want to fund and the structure you want to think about this as well. You know, the state does not tell you how to do this piece, that's a local decision. And if you saw with the state opioid abatement council, they're making priorities of, well, we want to see people who partner better, we want to see people who do these things. You too could decide, you know, given the data, given the extent of the problem, we want to prioritize these things this year. These are the things we really want to hit. And if that helps you narrow down your field a little bit, that is also something you can approach it that way.
Is there already a program in the county that deals with, people that have the addiction problem that are in the judicial system? That we
Yes.
could help better support?
Now, I know in my office, we have 3 social workers. And as they come
They
through the
provide
system,
kind of aftercare oversight, would that be
well, they're able to put them into drug rehabs and different things that will help, but, like I said, that, I'm on the investigative side of the house, and that's the social worker side of the house, but I know that they will be looking for some monies, but they will have to come up here and present. So
Right.
they'll come up here and present, but yes, there are social workers. I know we had drug court that was opened up back years ago, where the judges were able to, with the district attorney, was able to place people in drug courts, which had rehab programs set up to help them get.
We actually had a meeting with the drug court today,
Right.
but I was thinking more like if you have someone that's, we've arrested for fentanyl, for an addiction, they're going through the withdrawals, they're in the system, they're in the jail, if we could then work with whoever has the contract with the jail, you know, to get them on a program, the Suboxone, get them on that while they're there.
Yeah.
And then follow them up as an outpatient, you keep them from coming back and keep them from coming to the ER. I mean, to me, you save money at the county level, and I don't know if there's anything like that. I know years ago they looked at it, and that was before,
I know the
medically
sheriff has his
assisted.
own medical, and I know that when they show up, but I don't know how well they're able to deal with an addiction at the time. You know what I mean? Like a
Right, right.
rehab sort of
Yeah.
things.
And that's kind of what I see. It's like little tiny pockets, little sparks, but nobody works
Yeah.
together.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's gotta be a closed loop referral,
does.
so we're all talking to the same people and touching them where they need our expertise.
they
Yeah.
detox in the jail,
Right.
then they end up back in the ER, then they end up back
Right.
over here, and then it keeps,
Just, I mean, to give you an example, Sumner County decided to focus on the emergency department as the touch point, because they had a very similar conversation. We know these people are rotating through the agencies, so they are placing a navigator within their emergency department, but they have surrounded it, they've got a behavioral health organization, they're prevention coalition, their EMS, they're all at the table together, and the whole idea being that whenever these high utilizers, high risk people come through the emergency department, instead of medically stabilizing them and sending them out as they used to, now there's going to be a navigator. That navigator is really going to double down on working with them. They're going to give them a little care package to let them know we do care about you. They're going to give them naloxone, but they're going to try and get them to a warm handoff position with one of these community agencies, because they're going to build a referral system that's
They're like
seamless.
setting them up for like a Suboxone clinic type deal.
It'll all depend on what the person
They
needs.
What they need.
Yes.
Needs and what's available. For some people, it might be you're just going to get sort of peer navigator support. Maybe that's all they're ready for, or they want to get their mental health taken care of first.
That's a lot of it.
It is.
Yeah.
That, isn't it?
Yes.
So,
We keep
so
people
they're
like
really
that.
trying to build in a new piece of funding, but using existing programs, but it's back to that fragmentation. Some of these existing programs would love to have a relationship with the emergency department and be able to get these people early, but that's not necessarily an easy thing to build if you don't know the emergency department. But so this program, and I'm not suggesting you do the same program, but it's still that same idea of picking a touch point where you know a lot of people come through and you're like, well, let's do something differently at that point, and then try and build this referral system around that point to see if we can do something better. And then they're going to be measuring that on a regular basis to see if it makes a difference, and then tweaking it to try out different things to try and make it work. But it's been amazing to see them build a real partnership around this program, which all these people were there doing their own separate things really, really well, but now they're all doing it well together.
And that's what I would love to see.
Yes.
Yeah, me
I mean,
too.
that's what I
Me
think
too.
would close that gap. That's why if we had an organization that was already doing a component of it.
We got a good healthcare system here. If we could integrate that into the recovery and the criminal justice system, that
And someone to coordinate all that
yeah,
outside of.
that'd be all right.
Well, and again, and this is
Yes, it has to
completely
be
your
somebody that-
decision.
That's their dedicated
But you,
job.
you all could decide to prioritize, this is what we want applications for, this kind of model. I wouldn't make it too restricted so that
Right.
only one person could do it, but that is an approach you could say, we want to, get applications to build out this particular aspect of this. Some county, and again, Sumner County, they do have more money than you in that regard, but they were able to build this thing, but still have enough to also give out some community grants also. So they were doing a bit of both.
So I wonder if the drug court would have a program that we could.
See, a lot of that comes into play where upon conviction, then the social work program in the, like in the public defender's office are able to put them, or it's part of the plan. I
What
think
if we
what it
could
needs
work
to
that
do
into
is
the
the social
programs?
work program needs to be in the sessions court side of it. Once they're identified, you come in, you meet with the defense. I have a drug problem, I have an opioid problem. You're able to, at that stage, put them in a rehab program immediately, when the problem's there. And then bring them on through the court system, then there's punishment that comes out. And then from there, they go to an outpatient rehab, or whatever it is. I think the program's there and it's set up. I don't understand it,
It's fragmented.
but I
Yes.
think that it is being set up as we speak. Cause I mean, I know they're in our office and I see them, I just don't know what all they do.
They are.
That's where I don't want us to get.
What they're doing, what
2
they're trying
months
to do,
is
they're
not-
trying
a month is
to,
not
trying to
long
run
enough
those
to-
people into
It's
justice.
not a long
Right.
time to,
I can't think of any organization that I know of that we could identify in a month that would make a huge impact.
No, this is gonna be trial and error.
Yeah.
right,
No
So-
but
doubt
just
about
to
it.
go ahead and allocate those funds though, yeah, that's.
The one that I have the most familiarity with are the social workers at the public defender's office. You know, they've got 3 social workers over there, and what their aim is to line people up with the appropriate recovery services.
And
That's it.
that really is the key, when they have an option. You can go to jail and you can stay there, or you can go to this program that is effective. It's your choice.
And you have to hit people when they're,
When they're down.
when they don't have a lot of
In that
options.
That's the
small
key.
window,
Mhm.
in that very small
You know, we'd love
window.
to hit them before they hit the jail.
Yeah,
But when they're at that stage, everything's still,
You
I'm
know,
still
they
chasing
are.
it, you know?
There's still a
Yeah.
a hot mess,
That's
running
right.
around avoiding what the real problem is, so.
That's right.
If you can combine that with the social workers in the courtroom so that the judge doesn't let them,
But you
know,
have to get them
you know
while
what
you've
I
got
mean.
their attention.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Sounds like you'll have no problem moving this money. Just be a matter of the time frame, but,
We're on a tight, I feel like we're on a tight time frame, but once we get that done, I think we're gonna be good.
yeah, I do too.
well, again, if you guys feel like you've got a really solid idea and this time frame's getting in the way with it, Mayor, you can talk to the opioid abatement council and say, we have a plan, we're working the plan.
And we have mitigating circumstances here because the former mayor passed
Absolutely.
away midstream.
Absolutely,
And
Pretty
we have,
Yeah.
we have a very good case is why
absolutely,
this
and
did
then
not
just,
get rolling.
and just let them know
Yeah,
you're
because he
working
had a
with me.
lot of these ideas, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just let them know that you're working with me, that you have the committee, that you're working a plan, but if you guys have a solid idea that you're moving towards, again, better to do that right, and do it well than to rush along. Do keep in mind, again, whatever you build has to be sustained, so, again, it's very easy to lose track whenever you've got a bigger pot of money right now, and then it starts to dwindle, so, even
Yeah, I was kinda
like
wondering,
I said.
I was wondering how we were gonna spend that last 37,000.
Be like, well, it's
18
gone.
years from now.
Well, yeah, something like that.
So Mayor, another question, just for my ignorance, are we allowed, if we have the email chain group, are we allowed to discuss these things outside
No,
of, I didn't think so, just verifying.
no, must
So
be
we-
in a public
Okay.
meeting like this.
Okay, just making sure.
It's a good,
I mean, I love you.
Yeah.
I do too,
Yeah.
I'd already thought that.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's a good way to get a lot of work
Call a special
accomplished.
call meeting if
Yeah.
you got something of urgency and you need to make a decision on it. Ask
Well, we
the
can do that.
chairman to
Yeah.
call a
Okay,
meeting.
all right, I'm open to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, well, our next scheduled meeting, everybody okay with the 22nd of January at 5:30?
Yes.
Very well.
And then let me know when you need me to be here, each of you individually as well, if you've got questions or clarifications, you know how to reach out to me as well. And then, Mayor, I'm at your service as well.
Well,
in
thank
between
you.
times, so.
You're a very informative presentation. I think everybody grasps the concept.
Once you get this first allocation out of the way, I think it'll just, it
That's-
should
I-
fall
I-
into place.
Yeah, this is teething,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
All right.
and everybody's been in the same position, they've all had
I
to
kind
figure
of
it out.
felt like. Does everybody else feel like they're under the gun?
Let's put it this way, the past 3 days have been the busiest 3 days I've had so far. And I've been,
many counties-
yesterday was 5 hours of driving.
How many
so-
counties do you take care of? All 95?
No, I'm middle Tennessee,
Yeah.
I can't remember it, so we break it up by the
Okay.
The
grand
Grand Region.
region, so I can't remember what middle Tennessee,
Okay.
what that number amounts to, 30 something, I think. But, I go as far as Fentress County on the east, and, up into Pickett County, things like that, and Sequatchie County, that's where I was last night, and that was their first committee meeting as well. They're in exactly the same stage as you are. That was their first gathering and figuring out their processes, and, so they're right there with you.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
I hope
very
somebody
much.
makes a motion to adjourn.
Oh.
That's what I was hoping.
I make a motion to adjourn, and I make a motion that everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Oh, that was a
Merry
nice addition.
Christmas.
Yes.
Thanks,
Happy
guys.
Hanukkah.
Thank you.